Uruguay's 2026 World Cup ended the way it had been running for months. In chaos, in silence, and in commercial economy seats. When the final whistle blew in Guadalajara and Spain walked off the pitch, having won 1-0, Uruguay were eliminated from the group stage for the second consecutive World Cup. Cape Verde, ranked 67th in the world, had done enough to go through instead. And Marcelo Bielsa, 70 years old and visibly at his limit, walked straight to the cameras after the match and screamed at a reporter for not starting the interview fast enough. That moment told you everything about where this campaign had ended up. But it only scratched the surface of what had been building inside the Uruguay camp for nearly 2 years before a single ball was kicked in North America. To understand the full collapse, you have to go back to the summer of 2024. Uruguay had just finished third at the Copa America, which sounds acceptable until you remember they were considered one of the tournament favorites. The early results under Bielsa had been genuinely impressive. In his first 18 games in charge, Uruguay won 11 and drew 5. They beat Brazil, they beat Argentina. The football wasn't always elegant, but it was competitive, and the country got behind the Argentine coach. Then came the confrontation that split everything in two. At a team hotel in New York during a pre-tournament trip, Bielsa had instructed the players not to go outside and greet the Uruguayan fans who had gathered. He wanted controlled preparation, limited outside contact, the kind of monastic setup that Bielsa has always preferred. Luis Suarez, Uruguay's all-time record scorer with 69 goals and 143 international caps, stood up in front of the entire squad and told Bielsa they were going outside anyway, and they did. That public defiance from the most decorated player in Uruguayan football history was not a small thing. It was a line being drawn directly in front of the coach in a room full of people. After the Copa America ended with a semi-final loss to Colombia, Suarez went on an extensive media tour. He spoke about the negative atmosphere Bielsa had created. He spoke about a lack of respect. He spoke about a coach who had systematically dismantled team unity and made the environment difficult for everyone. According to reports from Uruguay, at one point during a squad meeting, Suarez reportedly spoke for 5 uninterrupted minutes, laying out his grievances directly, then paused and waited for a response from Bielsa. Bielsa gave him one word. It wasn't yes. The effect on results was immediate and brutal. Before the rupture with Suarez, Uruguay had won 11 and drawn 5 of their first 18 games under Bielsa. After it, they won just 5 of their next 17, including a 5-1 humiliation at home against the United States. The Suarez faction within the squad was never properly resolved. It was quieted, and quieting a problem is not the same as solving one. The divisions hardened quietly beneath the surface, while Bielsa kept coaching in exactly the way he had always coached. When Bielsa named his World Cup squad in May of 2026, the omissions hit Uruguayan football like a thunderclap. Suarez was left out entirely. His 69 international goals and 143 caps, not enough to convince the manager he had anything left to offer. But Suarez wasn't the only shock. Nahitan Nández, one of the most important midfielders during Uruguay's qualifying campaign and a close ally of Suarez, was also excluded. The Nández omission surprised so many people that Bielsa held a separate press conference specifically to state it was for footballing reasons only. Nobody in Uruguay fully bought that explanation. Ignacio Ruglio, president of Peñarol, and one of the most prominent voices in Uruguayan club football, went public, accusing Bielsa of continuous disrespect toward players and of breaking the squad before the tournament had even started. Inside the camp, Suarez allies who had not been left out were still present, not enough to be cut, but enough to keep the old fault lines alive. The squad that assembled in Cancun for pre-tournament training was split before it had played a single competitive minute. And then the injuries started. Before the opening game, Barcelona centre-back Ronald Araujo, one of Uruguay's most important defensive players, suffered a muscle tear during training. He had arrived at camp with what Bielsa described as a minor muscle problem, It escalated into a full tear during full contact drills. Jose Maria Gimenez was also working his way back from an ankle problem. Georgian de Arrascaeta had a calf issue. Bielsa stood in front of cameras before the tournament opened and said something that will be revisited many times in the weeks ahead. He said, "If the player gets injured in training, something is wrong." He then said his staff had done everything correctly and could not have done anything differently. That is a hard position to hold when 3 significant players are managing injuries sustained during your own preparation sessions. But Bielsa has never been a coach who wavers in public. He doubled down and moved on. Then there was the goalkeeper situation, which had no satisfying explanation regardless of how it was framed. Sergio Roche had been Uruguay's established first choice for years. He had earned that shirt through consistent performances at club and international level. But Bielsa recalled Fernando Muslera from international retirement. Muslera was 39 years old and had stepped away from the national team in 2024. Bielsa went and brought him back, handing him the #1 spot ahead of the goalkeeper, who had been doing the job properly and without issue. The decision confused Uruguayan football analysts at the time and drew immediate criticism from supporters who could see no clear footballing logic behind it. Uruguay opened their 2026 World Cup campaign against Saudi Arabia, ranked 61st in the world. They drew 1-1. A late goal from Maxi Araujo rescued a point that should never have been in doubt. Then came Cape Verde, ranked 67th. Another draw, 2-2, with Canobio pulling Uruguay level before a narrow second-half miss cost them what would have been 3 crucial points. 2 games. 2 draws against sides ranked outside the world's top 60, 0 wins. Uruguay had been one of the expected contenders to navigate this group comfortably. Inside the camp, whatever fragile order Bielsa had maintained was now coming apart openly. Before the decisive match against Spain, something occurred that is almost without precedent at a major international tournament. A group of senior Uruguay players called a direct, private meeting with Bielsa to confront him about what was happening. The players involved were Federico Valverde, Manuel Ugarte, Rodrigo Bentancur, and Roche, the goalkeeper who had been dropped in favour of Muslera. These were not peripheral squad members. Valverde is one of the best midfielders in world football and starts regularly for Real Madrid. Ugarte plays in the middle of the park for PSG. Bentancur has over 70 international caps and has been one of the better players in the Premier League. These were the engine room of the team. Their message was direct and covered 2 main issues. First, the training load. Players had been getting injured in preparation, and the squad felt the intensity of Bielsa's sessions was putting them at risk going into the most important match of their campaign. Second, tactics. They asked Bielsa to change his system against Spain, specifically to set up in a defensive low block and look to hurt the European champions on the counter. The request made obvious sense. Spain had just won the Euros. They had elite possession and pressing mechanics. Trying to match them in an open, high-intensity game was a significant risk. The players wanted to be organised, compact, and dangerous on transitions. Bielsa rejected both requests completely. He called a full team meeting in response, gathered everyone, and told the squad they would play exactly as they had been playing. No low block, no tactical adjustments, no concessions. And then, according to the Uruguayan outlet El Espectador, he went further. He accused the players directly of trying to get rid of him. He told the dressing room that the real reason behind their complaints was not training intensity or tactics, but anger at his decision to exclude Suarez and Nandez from the squad. He turned the confrontation back on them entirely. He also pointed to players whose careers he claimed to have developed, citing Maxi Araujo and Sebastian Cáceres as examples, essentially telling the room that they owed him, not the other way around. That is the internal state of the squad that walked out to face Spain in Guadalajara. For 42 minutes, Uruguay held. Then Muslera, the recalled veteran Bielsa had trusted over his established first choice, made a catastrophic error. He fumbled a straightforward shot from Alex Bainer, letting it creep under his body and over the line. Gary Neville, on commentary, said it immediately. It transformed the entirety of the half and crushed whatever spirit remained in the Uruguay camp. Bielsa's gamble on a 3-9-year-old goalkeeper returning from retirement had backfired at the worst possible moment. At half-time, the substitution was made. Rocher, the man who should have been starting from the first whistle of the tournament, came on to replace Muslera. In his press conference afterward, Bielsa told reporters that Muslera had asked to be taken off. Given everything that had happened in the weeks leading up to that moment, that explanation landed somewhere between complicated and unverifiable. If you want to follow this World Cup as more stories like this keep surfacing, subscribe. We cover what happens on the pitch and what goes on behind closed doors. Uruguay pushed in the second half and couldn't find the goal. Darwin, Núñez and the forwards, who had been wasteful across all three group games, remained wasteful when it mattered most. Spain controlled the tempo in exactly the manner Uruguay had refused to plan against. The final whistle came at 1-0. Cape Verde had drawn 0-0 with Saudi Arabia in the other match. The debutants, ranked 67th in the world, were through to the knockout rounds. Uruguay were going home. Bielsa stood in front of cameras after the match and delivered a statement that will echo in Uruguayan football for a long time. What I leave to Uruguayan football is nothing. The fourth place in the qualifiers had no value. The third place in the Copa America had no value. And, obviously, this performance, I don't need to define it. If you ask me how my tenure will be remembered, it's a tenure that left nothing. Whether that was honesty, bitterness, or simply exhaustion, nobody in Uruguay seems entirely sure. But Bielsa had never been a man who softened things for comfort, and he wasn't starting now. Then came the final detail that made the whole situation land with particular weight back in Montevideo. The AUF, Uruguay's football association, cancelled the charter flight home. The plane that had been booked to bring the entire delegation back together to the capital was scrapped. Players were told to arrange their own travel, their own commercial flights, their own connections and layovers. A squad that had already fractured along internal lines was now physically scattered across different airports, each player finding their own seat on whatever route was available. Think about what that decision communicates publicly. The Federation was not just disappointed. They were making a point of not flying the squad home together. There was no shared return, no collective moment of processing what had gone wrong. Valverde and Núñez and Ugarte and Bentancur, all of them finding their own way home from a tournament they were supposed to be competing in deep into July. What makes this collapse remarkable is the quality of the players involved. Valverde starts for Real Madrid. Ugarte was one of the most sought-after defensive midfielders in Europe before joining PSG. Bentancur has been among the better players in the Premier League for extended periods. Darwin Núñez has the pace and physical presence that most international strikers would envy. On paper, this was a squad more than capable of getting out of a group containing Cape Verde and Saudi Arabia. But football is not played on paper. Squads perform at the level of their psychological state, and Uruguay's psychological state going into this tournament was broken before they landed in North America. A manager and squad at war with each other for over a year, training sessions injuring key players, senior stars confronting the head coach the night before the most important match of the campaign. A goalkeeper recalled from retirement for reasons nobody could clearly explain, then making the error that ended their tournament. The ghost of Suarez and Nández hanging over every selection decision and every dressing room conversation. The Garra Charrua, the famous Uruguayan fighting spirit that has defined this country's football identity for over a century, was absent across all three group stage matches. It didn't disappear by accident. It was worn down, piece by piece, decision by decision, confrontation by confrontation, across the better part of 2 years. Cape Verde are in the round of 32, playing knockout football at their first ever World Cup. Uruguay are finding their own flights home. YouTube's already picked your next one. It's on screen right now.